Mindshift, the PLCS Empowerment Collective podcast. I'm Christopher Villarreal, one of your hosts, and I'm joined by the incomparable Deb Anderson.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here.
And today we are following up on our conversation from last week. Deb, we started talking about AI last week and kind of what is AI and how does it work. But this week, we're talking a little bit more practically about what that might look like for our families and for our students, because I would venture to guess that we probably have high school students, maybe even middle school students, that know more about AI than we do.
I would agree, Christopher. And I think about this. In fact, after last week's session with Cassie, I ended up with even more questions and feeling more behind, because I think our kids do know more than us. And for me, it's grandkids know far more. So when I hear about all of the different ways you can engage AI, all the things that she shared with us, it's a lot.
And I'm really excited because we do have Cassie back with us today to continue this conversation.
Yeah. Hello again. My name's Cassie Mallette. I am the program manager of UNO's AI Learning Lab, and I help run our learning lab, help faculty implement AI into their classes, and help staff learn how they can use AI in their jobs to be more efficient and to feel more satisfied with their jobs.
Which is really cool work. I think it's awesome that UNO has been at the forefront of some of this AI work happening in the higher ed levels.
Cassie, how did you get into AI work? I mean, I'm thinking about our students who might have similar interests. So what is your undergraduate degree? How did you tell us more about that path?
Well, it's not in technology or artificial intelligence. It's actually in sociology. I got my bachelor's and master's in sociology, and I taught sociology full-time at Iowa Western Community College for 6 years, and then made the move to instructional design at UNO. And what ended up happening is when AI came out in November of 22, my boss at the time was like, hey, do you want to look into this? And I was like, sure. And here I am a year and a half later as the program manager of the AI Learning Lab, just worked hard to really learn what generative AI is, how it can be helpful in teaching and learning. And now I'm helping people.
So if we had students that wanted to do a similar kind of work, instructional design, learn about AI, I don't know, but what would they do? What classes do they take? What do they major in?
Yeah, so there are a couple different routes. For instance, at UNO, they just launched a bachelor's degree in artificial intelligence. So if you want to learn how to build these systems, do those type of things, that's a great route. Now, if you're not necessarily into the back end of it, it's still an important skill to know how to use artificial intelligence. And that's something students can kind of do on their own. You don't need a degree in it, but you can build those skills. For instance, finding a micro-credential that's out there that can help you AI in this different whatever you might go into, or just skills in general, that can be helpful. Or practicing yourself. There's so many free resources out there that can help with like prompt engineering. The last spring, we actually had a panel of employers come and students. So it's an employer panel and a student panel. And students kind of told us what they wanted to learn. And employers told us the skills that they wanted students to have when they graduated and went out and applied for these jobs. And a lot of it was prompt engineering, learning how to talk with the tool and get a better response the first time or second time you interact with it. Being able to identify what they call hallucinations, because it will give you false information. Like I know we talked about last time, false citations. And sometimes what it does is it tries to just please you. It tries to give you an answer as quick as possible. And so that's why it can give you fake information. Being able to identify that, or being able to identify if there's bias in the response in some way, those were things that employers said they were really looking for in future employees. And that's not something you necessarily need an AI degree in, but good skills to develop.
That's great. Thank you.
And I know that you mentioned micro-credentialing. And I swear, you guys, this isn't a UNO commercial, but this is a biased panel because we are all UNO alumni, I myself included. But UNO has some micro-credentialing programs in the works or recently launched, right?
Yeah, so we have a bunch of micro-credentials that we launched in a variety of topics, and they're really for the upskilling and reskilling for individuals, whether you're already in the workforce or not. There are more coming, like we're going to have a AI for K-12 professionals and an AI for K-12 teachers, which I'm really excited about. My whole thing is, how do we help everyone in the community? My husband is an elementary ed teacher, so I know from experience, like shortages in the schools and people always having to do more with less. So how can we use generative AI to kind of benefit teachers to be able to do the stuff they need to do without feeling so burnt out all the time?
What conversations do you think families should be having at home about artificial intelligence, generative AI?
I think that a good question you could ask is, do you know what generative AI is? Have you used it? In what ways have you used it? Because I know you both were talking about, I think my students might know more than I do. And it's definitely possible there are students who know more. But I also have a lot of students in my class that don't want to use it. They're afraid to use it. They don't necessarily like it. They still like to do stuff on their own, or they are nervous about using it and their instructors thinking that they're using it to cheat when they're just using it as a tool. And I think understanding where your kids are on if they've used it or not is an important question to start out with. Now, another thing you could do if you're comfortable or you've used it yourself, think about ways you can help your kids build these skills, right? Can you help them with their prompt engineering? Can you show them how it can be beneficial while also kind of teaching them some of the cons of using generative AI?
I'm wondering, as I'm listening to you, Cassie, when you've talked last week and also today a little bit about the things AI doesn't do well, and I know you said citations last week, how would a parent know if they're trying to help their student and they're having these conversations? How do they know what to trust about AI and what not to?
What I normally say to people is, if you're using it, always be critical of the output that you're getting. If it seems off or not something you've heard of before, double check it. If it gives you an answer and you're like, that seems odd, I've never heard of that before, that should, pique your interest of maybe this isn't 100% accurate. Some ways that are really helpful, and I think this can be helpful with students too, using it to brainstorm. That can be extremely helpful to just get started. You're using it to come up with a topic and then you move on and you do it yourself. But it's also really important that you're not violating the classroom policy. Like if the teacher has a policy that says they cannot use it on an assignment or they can, that's something to go by as well.
I remember when I was in elementary school, at the top of all of our math worksheets, it would say, you can use a calculator or you cannot use a calculator.
Mm-hmm.
And this reminds me of that, right? Because now, I don't actually know. I haven't been in an elementary math lesson in however old I am, right? So I don't know if they still put that at the top of the paper, but I feel like this is a little bit like that. It's an evolution in educational technology. I think an undertone from the conversation that we had last week and a conversation that we had this week is that AI is not scary and we should try it out and see how it works. But when it comes to using it for school or for work for adults, what are some of those ethical considerations when we're doing that, right? If I'm supposed to write a paper about World War II, and it's a fact-based history paper about World War II, it's probably going to spit out something pretty legitimate. What are your thoughts on some of those ethical considerations?
Yeah, I've actually found when my students use AI, they never meet the requirements of what I'm asking them to do. And so if you just put something in AI or ask it to write something for you and turn it in, more than likely a student will not get a good grade on it because they're not paying attention to the detail in there. And oftentimes there's more things that you need to add. So for instance, if you are asking it to write a paper about World War II, but then students also need to add in citations from a school book, most AI tools are not going to be good at that because they might not have access to that text, right? or maybe it's an older version and it's not the right page numbers or something along those lines. There can be a lot of risk of just taking it as it is. And so I always say it can be a great collaborative tool, but at the end, what you turn in should be a reflection of your own writing and what you think about something.
When I listen to you, it really does sound like it's about using it in an appropriate way, but you still have to have that critical thinking. And the student does, of course, but so does the teacher. I mean, if you're the teacher and you're grading, you're going to also have to use your critical thinking to evaluate the assignment that's getting turned in. And my worry as a former faculty member at UNO is that students might be tempted because of lack of time. They're so busy, they're working, to just plug it in and let AI do it all for them and then turn it in. So how do we keep critical thinking at the forefront?
Yeah, so a lot of faculty at UNO are actually using it to help build critical thinking skills. So if you teach your students that it is not always accurate and it will provide you with false information, one of the best things that can be done is have them use it in a way where they will more than likely get bad results. That will require them to think critically about the output, and it helps with that. I know 21st century skills are extremely important in most school districts, so building those critical thinking skills. Media literacy, I think, is huge. That helps with this. AI literacy is right involved with that. And I think that is something that can be super helpful. When you find out, oh, it's actually really bad at that, you won't use it in those ways, or you'll learn how to use it better, and you'll always think critically about it. So yeah, a lot of people are using it to build critical thinking skills, which is the opposite of what I hear the most of. I feel like we're all going to become over-reliant on it and we're all going to lose our ability to do anything. It's kind of that, I know you were all last time we were talking about movies. Idiocracy is one that comes up a lot, of where kind of technology takes over and people don't have to think for themselves anymore. In this case, I think you need the human oversight. In education especially, I always think of that human connection. I think we all can still remember our favorite teachers from school because they built that human connection and like believed in us or whatnot. You don't get that from AI, and I don't ever think it will be that good at that, where we still need that human connection to help kids.
You know what I love is you have just that little conversation there talked about the title of this podcast, because we do want to shift people's perspectives. So when you're talking about people are using AI to teach critical thinking, that turns it on its head from what most people might think.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a really neat perspective. I love pop culture. I've said that a couple times on our show, but another movie that comes to mind for me is WALL-E.
Yeah.
Because that one's one that I feel like a lot of kids have seen, but WALL-E, where everyone is just, technology does everything for you.
I thought of the Wild Robot that came out this year.
Love that one.
Yeah, I love that one too.
Yep, really good. Well, we're coming close to the end of our time. AI is such a big topic. There's so much that parents, students, teachers, all of us can learn about it. If after listening to us talk last week and this week, people are feeling behind the curve, they're like, gosh, I kind of what Deb was saying at the beginning of this episode, I feel like I have even more questions now than I did before. What's your best advice for somebody feeling behind the curve?
It's never too late. I even think we're doing a lot at UNO, and I'm really proud of us. And sometimes I still think like, we could probably be doing more. But what I've learned is everyone's kind of on their own path. It's never too late to start. It's never too late to try it out for yourself. And you might pick it up a lot quicker than you think on being able to use it successfully. So don't be afraid to just get out there and try it out.
I think that's the perfect advice. I think once you start using it, you lose a little bit of that apprehension related to it. So thank you. Thank you again, Cassie, for joining us both last week and this week. This has been a really cool conversation. And thank you, listener, for listening to Mindshift. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you follow us on your favorite podcast platform. You can also check us out online at plcschools.org/Mindshift. And you can join us next week. We'll be talking about how to support your student academically at home. So we'll see you next time.